In prior videos, we covered how resumes can inject bias into your hiring process and don't work very well in terms of helping you make better hiring decisions. Unfortunately, the same is largely true of the other mainstay of the modern hiring process, the interview. Research shows that unstructured interviews are surprisingly weak signals in terms of predicting job performance, and are fraught with peril in terms of introducing subjectivity and bias into your talent acquisition efforts. For example, studies show that 30% of interviewers have made up their mind about a candidate's suitability in the first 5 minutes of an interview, and that too often these first impressions are based on superficial variables that are not at all job-related. Things like physical appearance, gender, height, dress, ethnicity, and how much we have in common with the candidate. The problem is that once that first impression hardens, it anchors the interviewer to a premature verdict and is not often overturned by the more substantive interactions that might follow. The good news, though, is that the same research that highlights the shortcomings of unstructured interviews shows that structured interviews work much better as predictive tools. Well, what do we mean by this? What is a structured interview? Structured interviews typically involve two things: a common set of standardized questions measuring job-related qualities of all candidates, and second, they're scored according to a predetermined criteria and weighting for the various categories. In situations where multiple interviewers are interviewing a candidate, each person would independently score the candidate on a common rubric and combine their scores afterwards in order to limit any biased influence from any one of the interviewers. Doing interviews this way makes them more objective, more rigorous, and fair, and helps ensure that subjectivity and bias don't unduly sway the results. In our experience, based on data we've gathered from surveys, many people think they already do structured interviews, but very few actually do them based on this definition I just laid out. Just having some questions scripted in advance is not really the same as doing structured interviews. I think part of the reason that structured interviews aren't more common is that they sometimes feel inorganic or stiff or scripted, and they don't feel right. And the scoring is also kind of labor-intensive and requires thoughtful planning. But doing structured interviews doesn't mean you can't ask follow-up questions, or even that you can't have some questions that are specific to each candidate. It means having a common core of content of items that are scored and so produce standardized, quantifiable results that reflect the quality of responses in those predetermined job-related areas. So the more structured you can make your interviews, the less bias will creep in and the more predictive your interviews will be.